All right, let's jump into a deep dive on something pretty interesting today.
Okay.
We're looking at this article, and wow, the title.
Yeah.
It's something else. 99.9% of all women are turned on. If you say this tested on thousands of women.
Oh, wow.
Now, me personally, I see that, and my BS detector's kind of going off.
Yeah, I think anyone's would looking at that.
Right. But who knows? Maybe we'll find a little truth nugget in here somewhere in this clickbait.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe there's some interesting stuff buried in there somewhere.
Exactly. So let's dive in.
Okay.
One of the first things that kind of jumped out at me was this idea that a lot of men misunderstand what it means to create an emotional connection with women. And the article is saying instead of focusing on the traditional romantic gestures, guys should be paying more attention to how they make a woman feel.
Okay.
Particularly tapping into her sense of desire. So what do you think about that?
I mean, there's definitely some truth to that, I think.
Yeah.
We can all agree romantic gestures can be nice, but they don't always speak to the deeper parts of attraction.
Yeah.
The unspoken stuff, almost like making a woman feel desired.
Yeah.
That's more than just, flowers or chocolates.
Yeah.
It's got to be exciting and intriguing.
Right.
Maybe even a little mysterious.
So it's like you're saying instead of immediately going to a rolling boil, you want to let that attraction simmer for a little bit.
Exactly. And this article actually criticizes men for being too direct when it comes to expressing attraction.
Interesting.
It's saying women are more drawn to the subtle cues, like little playful hints or things that are left unsaid.
Okay.
It's like imagination is a big part of attraction, especially for women.
So instead of being super straightforward and saying, hey, I'm interested, you're creating a space for her to be like, is he flirting with me, or what does that mean?
Right. It's the difference between reading a book summary and letting the story unfold.
I like that.
With subtlety, she can fill in the blanks and make her own narrative.
Yeah, and don't they say the best stories are the ones we tell ourselves? Speaking of stories, though, this article gets pretty specific about what guys should actually be saying to create that playful tension.
Oh, yeah.
What are some examples?
Well, let's say a woman's flirting with you.
Okay.
They suggest you could playfully accuse her of hitting on you. You could say something like, wow, you're so hitting on me right now.
Okay, so what do you think about that?
It's definitely an interesting tactic.
Yeah, I can see how it would work if it's done with the right tone.
Right.
Lighthearted and teasing.
Yeah, like a playful challenge.
But I could also see it backfiring if it came off as not genuine or condescending.
Absolutely. There's a fine line there.
For sure. So is it manipulative, or is it just a playful way to acknowledge what's already happening?
It could be both.
Oh, yes.
It depends on how it's done. If it's genuine, it can be seen as a charming way of acknowledging the flirtation.
Okay.
But if it feels forced or sarcastic, yeah, it might not go over well.
Yeah. So I guess it's all about authenticity and reading the room. You can't just use these lines without considering the person and how they're responding to you.
Absolutely. It's about being present in the moment.
Yeah.
Picking up on the cues and going with the flow. You can't just rely on a script.
Right. You need that genuine connection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a dance almost.
Oh, yeah.
You're both responding to each other's moves, and you create this unique rhythm to the conversation.
I like that.
Speaking of creating a vibe, the article also talks about asking these intriguing questions.
Okay.
Not your typical small talk, though.
All right. I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Okay, well, think have you ever been skinny dipping? Or what's your take on PDA?
Okay.
It's about moving past that surface level chit-chat.
Yeah.
And sparking something more personal and playful, even a little daring.
I see what they're going for. It's not just about getting the info.
Right.
It's about making her curious.
Exactly.
And maybe even revealing a little something about yourself, too. But wouldn't those questions be a little too forward?
Well, it depends. I mean, especially early on when you're just getting to know someone.
Right.
That's where reading the room is so important.
Right.
You have to be aware of the dynamic you've built so far.
Right.
And see how comfortable she seems.
You don't want to make her feel pressured.
No, definitely not. The goal is to create that spark, not make her uncomfortable.
For sure. Consent and respect, always.
Absolutely.
You want it to feel fun and flirty, not an interrogation. Haha.
Right, exactly.
So we've talked about subtle cues and playful accusations and intriguing questions.
Yeah.
What about this secret phrase they keep mentioning?
Ooh, yeah. You wanted the big reveal?
Lay it on me.
Okay. They say you should tell her, you're totally flirting with me right now, aren't you?
Okay. I have to admit, that's kind of clever.
Right.
It's like flipping the script.
Uh-huh.
And there's some humor in there, too.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
But do you think it's genuine? Could it actually work?
I mean, any bold move could be brilliant or it can totally flop.
True.
The delivery is everything.
Right.
If you say it with genuine warmth and you're playful about it,
Yeah.
it could be a really charming way to acknowledge that there's some flirting going on.
Okay.
But if it sounds forced or sarcastic, yeah, it's going to have the opposite effect.
So it's not really about memorizing a magic phrase or anything.
Right.
It's about understanding the idea behind it,
Exactly.
being playful and confident and acknowledging the attraction, but in a way that feels authentic.
Yeah, and this article spends a lot of time talking about what not to do.
Okay, interesting. What are some examples of that?
Well, like, they warn against being overly explicit or coming across as needy or desperate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Confidence is attractive, but neediness, not so much.
Right. It's all about finding that balance.
Showing you're interested, but not being too over the top.
Exactly. You got to maintain your sense of self-worth.
For sure.
And they emphasize over and over again how important it is to read the room and respect boundaries. You know, building real rapport.
And you know what I find interesting is that this approach, even though it's talking about attraction, it really lines up with healthy communication in any relationship.
That's a really good point.
Right.
It's not just about getting a date.
Right.
It's about creating a dynamic where everyone feels good.
Comfortable and respected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings us back to that initial claim about men misunderstanding emotional connection.
Right.
They're saying guys focus too much on big romantic gestures
Yeah.
and not enough on what actually makes a woman feel connected.
What are your thoughts on that? I think it's a bit of a generalization. I mean, yeah, some men might fall into that trap, but it's not fair to say all men do.
True.
But I do think it brings up an important point.
What's up?
Emotional connection. It's not about saying the perfect words or doing all the right things.
Yeah.
It's more about creating a space where both people feel seen and heard and understood.
Absolutely. I agree completely. It's about fostering that sense of intimacy and vulnerability, which can be so attractive.
Yeah.
And that often means going beyond those surface level interactions and engaging with the person on a deeper level.
Wow. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Playful accusations, intriguing questions, and even a so-called secret phrase that's supposed to just work on all women.
Right.
But I think the thing that's really sticking with me is that attraction is really complicated.
It is.
It's this balance of confidence and playfulness,
Yeah.
but also genuine connection.
Absolutely. And this article, even though it was a little over the top, it's made us think about some really interesting things.
For sure.
Like how we approach attraction and how we build relationships.
Yeah, it's given me a lot to think about. And I'm curious, for our listener out there, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried any of these things? What's been your experience?
You know, whether or not you agree with everything this article said,
Right.
I think the big takeaway here is that attraction is about more than just looks or using some cheesy pickup line. It's about understanding what makes people tick,
Okay.
what creates that spark,
Yeah.
and what leads to those deeper, more fulfilling relationships.
So it's not about manipulating someone into liking you.
No, not at all.
It's about being genuine
Yeah,
and approaching relationships with respect.
exactly. And even though this article was all about attracting women,
Yeah.
I think a lot of what we talked about applies to any relationship,
Oh, be sure.
romantic or not.
Right.
It's about being present and listening to the other person and making them feel valued.
Because at the end of the day, we all just want to feel connected, right?
Absolutely. We want to feel understood,
Yeah.
appreciated.
Exactly. So, listener, we've gone pretty deep on this one.
We have.
We've looked at all these different techniques and talked about how important it is to be authentic.
Yeah.
And we challenged the idea that there's just one right way to approach relationships.
And hopefully we've given you some things to think about.
Yes, definitely. And think about your own experiences.
Yeah, how you approach building connections.
Because learning about ourselves and other people, it's a journey.
Good idea.
It never really ends.
Nope.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.